how do you keep starting new companies? Do you just have like these ideas that come to you whilst you're in the shower or something, and then you write it down on your notebook that you keep in the shower room? Or but how do you constantly keep starting companies and growing them to a point where you sort of like exit
No,
out?
but
So
I think as they say, ideas are cheap, no? It's the execution, I think, that is the most difficult part. However, it's not ideas, it's not just me. I'm just one of many. I just happen to actually work with a lot of people actually that actually give ideas, contribute, work on ideas. I think it's the execution that actually, especially in this field now.
So, welcome back to the MedTech 101 podcast. And in today's episode, I have an interesting serial entrepreneur who has started several companies and sold them. But at the same time, Adrian has also worked in academia. So it's quite interesting to see the blend between, working together, PhD and doing an MBA, studying companies and selling them. And right now, he recently started this new company called Plex Medical, which is in process just to make really fascinating, exciting equipment there. I don't want to spoil the details too much on what exactly they're making, but I'm really looking forward to talking about it today. But prior to this, it also started two companies, one called Umana Medical, which was sold 3 years ago to GPI Group, which is a big company, and another company called Neurotech International, I think, and this company basically is based in Australia as well. So it's quite an interesting journey, and I'm happy to have you on the podcast today, Adrian. Welcome.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, so then just to kick off, like this is something that I do on this podcast. I always start with just like an icebreaker, and like how many countries have you lived in, Adrian? Because you seem to have moved around a lot.
Well, I moved to the UK when I was I'm from Malta, and I always, for some reason or another, I always end up going back to Malta because I love living in Malta. But I lived in London. I lived in the UK. I also lived in Guildford. Then I moved. I lived in Milan. I did a small project, and I lived in Lannion in north of France. So yeah, I've been quite a little bit around. I'm just a curious guy going around.
Yes, and and did you live in Australia at some point, or like?
No, but I used to go up and down frequently
Makes sense.
when that company went on the stock exchange in Australia.
Nice, and you also did your postdoctoral research in Cambridge as well.
No, I was. That's not exactly the. That's what we did is I had a collaboration with an institute at the University of Cambridge, which was the Institute of Mental Health Research, which was in conjunction with the University of Cambridge, and we used to have actually a. I mean, I used to be there when I used to be there. We used to have actually a conference every 2 years where I used to actually get to spend some beautiful time in Clare College, which was beautiful.
Nah, that's really good. I think it's impressive because like I thought like when I was doing the research, this is I think usually I do research on all the companies that I bring here, but this one was quite interesting reading up on your background and the things you have done to date. And yeah, before we even talk about the medtech, like I mean, how did you end up in as an entrepreneur? Because from what I understood, you started in academia, and then from the last conversation, you happened to fall into business by mistake or by accident. Can you tell us the
Well,
story?
yeah, I mean, I fell in love with business. Let's put it like this. I started off. I went when I went to the UK. I went up to study totally different stuff. I was really much into IT and into audio engineering and stuff like that. And then actually I stumbled upon technology. I've always been actually quite into technology. So in technology development, I used to code myself. I used to do a lot of stuff actually in that realm actually, and I fell in love. So I had discovered the first EEG, electroencephalography, when I was studying audio engineering and doing digital signal processing, the normal fast Fourier transforms and stuff like
Yes,
that.
yes.
And basically, I fell in love with EEG. And I remember I was actually doing, I did also a master's in London Metropolitan University. And I remember going to my supervisor, and I had written and published this paper called Converting MIDI, converting EEG signals into MIDI. And I used to actually play a lot around that stuff. And in fact, I used to follow a lot the works of Professor Miranda at the Plymouth University and stuff like that. And I had published my first paper. In fact, I was still a student there, on the AES journal, the Audio Engineering Society journal. I got really fascinated. Then actually, I expanded a little bit more my studies into EEG, into different type of brainwave types, etc., and automatically started making my transition then to join Professor Cavallari for my PhD in Milan, totally in human physiology. So basically, I always got driven, I think, more by the products I was working on or I was thinking on. So I have always, without knowing, I think, had a bit of an entrepreneurial mind. But I never imagined myself setting up a company, etc. And when I did that, I mean, I was clueless when I started my first company. I didn't have a clue actually of where to start from, and especially when then starting the whole, the regulatory type of aspect of thinking of a medical device, I was totally clueless at the start.
No, interesting, and it's I like how you say that when you started you didn't really know much, and but you just continued anyway. So I think that has to do a lot with just your attitude as well towards how you look at things in life, I guess, which is really good. And after that, you didn't just start one company, you started several. So and now you're in the process of starting another one. And I was saying, and what I spent some time looking on the internet to see how much GPI bought Umana. I couldn't find any information, so I guess that's proprietary information. But like most people, be thinking about retiring, in the Caribbean on a nice island somewhere.
No, it wasn't.
What
And
keeps
it
you
wasn't
going?
like that. I mean, when it comes to Mana, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not exactly a pure acquisition. They are still into it and they are growing it. That's the most important thing of Omana. Omana still has a long way to go to actually continue to grow big time. Myself, I'm very much always interested in growing new ventures. So I don't think I'll get off the medtech world anytime soon. So
No, that's really good. And for people out there who don't know what Umana Medical does, it's and correct me if I'm wrong, Adrian, but Umana basically is a company that uh, helps people, or yeah, patients and doctors monitor like their vital signs. And by vital signs, it's things like your body temperature, your blood pressure, and you even also have another sensor which is sort for glucose as well, which looks really interesting. And I think this is connected to like the smart technology you guys have at Umana, or that
well,
that the company
I'm
is
I'm
built
no
on.
longer part of Omana actually to say that, but we had started actually that company with the vision of being able to actually monitor patients. And then actually COVID struck. So basically, this was all before exactly on the cusp of COVID. And we had already actually worked on a device for vital signs. And of course, as you know, the whole telemedicine world changed over COVID. In fact, I think COVID pushed a lot the boundaries of digital health in general. And I think that's actually where things started to get interesting because, I mean, I started my first company in Malta 14 years ago, and it was the first medical devices company in Malta owned by a Maltese. Everyone used to call me crazy actually because why are you getting into? Nobody knew how to handle us back then. And in fact, we used to actually, I remember actually, we didn't even know what to actually certify our product was because we didn't have a notified body. Until now, Malta doesn't have a notified body to certify medical devices. We were actually just me, and I remember back then my ex-wife, which was also very much into helping me out and to figure what to do. And we
True.
had to build from scratch our quality management system, our certification pathway, which nobody knew how to help us. So it was quite a different world, Malta, 14 years ago than it is today when it
Nice.
comes to building a medical devices company.
True.
So it's actually it was a very interesting journey. It was very nice as well for me seeing Malta change in that regard, because it
Nice.
changed a lot in that regard, but to the better. But back then, actually, nobody knew how to handle a company like ours.
And I really love that story because essentially you're one of the pioneers of the medtech scene in Malta, basically. And right now, for people who don't really know or listening right now, Malta is it's become a little hotspot for medical device companies. So the government is heavily involved there to help companies, particularly in medtech, medical devices and things like that. And the partnership that I formed a couple of weeks ago, with Dylan at MedTech World. They're also based out of Malta. So yeah, next year I'm gonna be coming to Malta for the first time in my life for the next conference for the World Summits, which we'll be doing in November. And it's interesting to see that. But do you feel like because you saw how the company or the country's attitude grew towards medical devices, did you feel like you played a huge part in opening people's minds, or
Well, I mean, that I think is stretching it, playing a bit part, because I think I was one of the first that was interested in the area. And I still look at the development of the MedTech world in Malta, so the industry, as something which is very interesting. I was lucky enough to be in it at the very start, and when I see the attitude, how the country is actually helping out new medtech companies, makes me feel proud. But I don't say I played a crucial part. I was just there. I was an early player in the industry. I think most probably a bit too early actually, because most people didn't even understand the concept of medical device. And back then, let's put it like this: back then, even at European level, when it comes to the medical device directive, etc., was a very different world as well. It was still experimenting. I remember the start of the medical device directive, which now is becoming the medical device regulation, the MDR. It was a very different world as well. So now the industry is shaping up nicely on an international level. Back then, it was a little bit of a still something that was, like other industries are at the moment, still building themselves, etc. I'm
nice?
happy that, however, Malta took the advantage and grew over time. I remember also, even you mentioned Dylan at Tard. I mean, I collaborated a lot with Dylan at the very start of the MedTech World Conference, and he did a brilliant job in also helping putting Malta on the map when it comes to being a hub for MedTech as well. So I think at different points, different characters and people came together to try to build that in this. Happened to be just one of them, but by pure coincidence. I just was very curious very early on.
No, that's good. That's good. And because of that, I know you also did some work as an auditor. Because, as I said, I was
Yeah.
reading a bit on you. But was that in Germany? Was that a German auditing company?
No,
That
it was
or
different area.
yeah,
What happened is, because I fell in love with building medical devices
yes,
companies, I automatically started to gain knowledge on what we call quality management systems. Any
yes,
company that wants to scale up, and any company, especially in the medical devices field, need to have a proper system at the back to protect the patients, the customers, etc. So these are called quality management systems. There's the ISO 9001, for example, but the medical devices, we talk about the ISO 13485. That, and together with then the other regulations, that's the way how you actually build your technical file as well to certify your products. Over the years, since I had to do it all from scratch, not knowing anything, I fell in love with that part of it. And during the time, I was finding myself building a lot of knowledge and interest in this. And a lot of startups, friends of mine as well, were having problems in setting up this. So automatically, without knowing, I built a small consultancy company, which is still growing and doing fine, where we try to help startups, other companies as well, in a number of different ISO certifications as well. And doing that, then I expanded a bit my knowledge and helped the notified bodies or the CAB certification bodies to audit some companies when it comes to specific rules. One of them was, and they helped me a lot by giving me training as well, was, for example, I did a lot of training with DQS, which is a German company.
Yes.
Which is a German certifier, which they gave me a lot of knowledge in terms of the training part on that. So basically, the thing is, when you get into an industry and you love the industry, you automatically fall in love. It's a little bit like going out with a very beautiful woman, no? Like
Yes.
you go out and you slowly fall in love, and
Yes.
times you do crazy stuff to actually do that. So I think
Yes.
that's exactly what happened in my case. I mean, over 15 years, I fell in love with different parts of this industry,
Yes.
and
And
that got me to remain in it very actively.
nice. That's really good. That's really good to hear. And I'm actually motivated to hear that. And later on, I'm going to ask you what you like about the medtech industry. I'll come back to that point. But I mean, like right now, this new company you started, Plex Medical, it's it seems like there's a lot of stuff that's happening there. Like like the last time when we spoke, you showed me. I don't know if I can say it here, but the ring you showed me, even wearing it right now, which is basically a non-invasive, fashionable way of monitoring your vital signs. And like I know the website is still coming up because that's how new it is. And
Yeah,
everything. So even look,
we've been working on Plex
yes,
Medical. We've been working on it on a stealth mode type of thing for over a year.
yes,
And it's not just the ring. So basically, the concept of building something like Plex Medical is to help building what we call ecosystem, an ecosystem that helps doctors, patients, hospitals, etc., to deliver most of the care services as much as possible from the person's home ecosystem. We're seeing a lot of initiatives on an international level where we're trying to move as many patients from a hospital setting to their own home, giving them all the care services. I mean, even the NHS in the UK are actually launching a lot and promoting these what we call virtual wards, for example, etc. It's all a whole initiative of trying to get as much the ability of, instead of having the health system solid, old
yes.
traditional health system, and the patient needing to adapt to it, we put the patient at the center of the actual care service, and we try to adapt the system to it. Like that, we free a lot of beds in normal hospitals, and at the same time, we hope to give actually a better service, a better care experience to the patient from the patient's home. So that's actually what Plex is all about. So we build both, we're working on hardware, we're working on software and collaborations. So we're actually all the time trying to better ourselves. So we've been over a year working in stealth mode, hoping now to launch properly actually in the next few months. We got on board as partners a private health hospital group, which we're trying to actually collaborate together in order for us to even be able to test our technologies inside hospital settings, etc., before then scaling up our services. And I think we're very close now to be in a position to scale our services very fast.
True. Now that's really good, and I realized it was stealth mode because usually I'm quite thorough with my research leading up to these episodes that I do, and I could barely find as much on Plex Medical. So I was thinking like this company, what are they doing? Because and then you showed me the ring, which looks really nice, and again, I'll put the links of everything we're talking about below in this episode so people who listen can find the information much easier. But it's impressive, and Like right now, so are you going to start up with scaling slowly in Malta, or is it already going to be somewhere in the EU? Like, what are your...
So the plan is Malta is a perfect place
Yes.
for a test bed, but it's usually only that. Then you always try to actually scale it up in other countries, because Malta, it's a highly representative country. We have a lot of different. It's a very highly cosmopolitan type of country. Yet it's very small and therefore very manageable. So ideally, it's the perfect. I mean, in the past when I used to study actually, as well, they used to tell us that in the actual telecoms industry, Watford would be exactly the definition like Malta, no? We're a tiny place which is highly representative, and yet you can actually physically scale it up. And I think Malta is perfect for that. Apart from that, since the services, the collaboration between even with the local health initiative, etc., it's very easy to build collaborations that can help you, that can help a company like ours, like companies I've always worked in myself, being able to actually scale up a particular service. So Malta is perfect to be based, but of course, when you search for markets, we are trying, now I cannot mention actually, but we're trying to build some good collaborations as well outside of Malta throughout Europe. Europe is a very good place to start off with, because of course getting BCE certification, etc. You're trying to, that's your first port of call, and then of course from that then you build via also regulatory pathways as well to expand towards that. So our first markets will be the European part, and then aiming at expanding beyond that.
Nice, nice. That's really good. And I think, just to take this opportunity as well, just to mention it out there for some people who are listening, was you mentioned sort of like, being able to monitor patients away from home, and basically putting the hospital in people's homes. And that's also become a norm here in the UK, where if you need to go to the doctor, for instance, usually you first have to ring them, and then they ask you all these questions, and they have to take a survey to see how severe it is. And essentially, with this technology that you're bringing to market, is basically saving a lot of time for that survey, because they can monitor the patient's vital signs, which already reduces the questions they'll have to ask you. So essentially, it will make the system better. So I just wanted to let that be said, because there might be other people listening up from different countries
That's
where they might not have that.
that is the aim, and that's what as well. But what actually kept us going for the last year and what we're doing at the moment, because before arriving at that, that's why it's very important that all our devices, the devices we attach to our systems, are of a certain level. So basically, all our devices are certified as a medical grade, as a medical devices under the MDR, etc. So that actually is the part where at the moment actually we spent a lot of time and thought to actually make sure that the signals we're feeding the system are actually at a certain level that we can rely on them. And that's where actually we're trying to focus ourselves.
No, no, that's good. And yeah, and then the other thing that I was going to ask you, because obviously I'm quite excited about this, and everything that you guys are working on right now with your team. I mean, for people like who are listening right now and thinking to themselves, okay, this is going to be on the market. Is it going to be affordable? Like, because right now there's some rings that are on the market. They're going for like about 350 US dollars, which is about 300 pounds, British pounds,
I think
and
a system to make
yeah,
sure it arrives to the right patients, it needs to be affordable. I
yes,
think even when we look at digital health in general, I think placing yourself too high on the
yes,
market, that's when it will take longer for people to actually physically get into
makes
it.
sense.
So basically, I look at actual devices themselves as not the actual system, but these are all peripherals to access the system. In due
Nice,
course, the systems I believe we're going to be seeing on the market are going to be inclusive, that even I'm creating a particular system, I don't need you to for sure use my ring,
yes,
but you can use whatever devices you have. The
yes,
only problem in all that is one, how reliable are the devices that are supplying you the data. So the crucial part is at the moment, even for us, is to put on the market a very affordable piece of a device that, however, has the highest of standards when it comes under the medical device regulation, under the MDR.
True. And just to add on to that, this is going to be a class one, I guess, medical device. Or
It would be actually it would be either a class one with a function, with a measuring function.
yes,
Okay?
nice.
However, then all the physical data within the app, within the whole systems, then under the MDR, every medical software, nearly every medical software under the new regulation, especially, would be under class 2A. For example, class 2A, or if it's a therapy aspect, which we won't be going into that. We're going to be into data entering the system, would be under class 2A, or if it's more, it would be under class 2B. But in this case, it would be under class 2A.
okay, all right, nice, and that's good. And for people who don't know the classifications as much, I did an episode earlier on this podcast where I explained all the classes of medical devices, so they can go there and just replay that episode and listen to it, and then you'd understand. But and then moving towards like what you wanted, what you're basically aiming for, because from when we discussed, you said you've been trying to get this telemedicine, which is the approach you guys are working on now, on the market for a very long time, and it took COVID to convince people. So I guess, like, what exactly changed
Well,
between before
well,
COVID and
remember,
after COVID?
telemedicine's attempts, actually, if you go back, would date back to the 1980s, 1970s as well, the initial parts, no? How it all started. I think what we're calling now today as digital health. Really, most of it is telemedicine or telemonitoring. Have started actually much earlier on. But COVID, because of the constraints of people going to the physical providers, gave people no much choice. They couldn't get out of home. So automatically, that built a certain amount of need and necessity. I think all big factors in the world, if you go all the changes that happen in the world, usually happen because of a case of necessity. I think it helped a lot the authorities to accept and be more tolerant on new technologies, which is usually the hardest obstacle when it comes to medical. And it's rightly so in most cases, because of course there's always the patient's health at risk. But it gave the ability for the authorities to actually give a push, because they needed people to be treated in their own homes. And at the same time, people involved, of course, entrepreneurial and scientific communities, to actually focus more on improving particular parts of technologies. In fact, what we saw is that in certain aspects of telemedicine post-COVID, we saw a retraction, no? We saw a bit of a retraction.
Yeah. Yes.
However, then we also saw new areas adopting the technologies that we used during COVID for other aspects. For example, post discharge of patients after a surgery.
Yes.
Nowadays, doctors, hospital settings, etc., are more equipped to actually monitor these patients from their own home after they are discharged from hospitals. But that could only happen because the actual technologies that were developed during COVID, and then the hospitals had access to the software, to the technology as well, and decided to deploy them for that particular case. So I think COVID, in a way, actually, unfortunately, was a huge. I think all society suffered because of COVID, but in a way, actually, was a little bit of something that pushed forward innovation when it came to digital health and telemedicine.
Yeah, definitely. There's this saying that I hear all the time. They say something like necessity is the mother of all invention. And I guess in this tight constraints where people didn't really want to go to the hospital. I mean, even I remember the first time I had to do a phone call with a dentist. I just needed to just go for like a normal routine check, and I had to try to describe how I felt or certain things like with my teeth. And it was weird doing that over the phone because I'd never done that. And I was thinking to myself when COVID happened, I was what, 2021 at the time, and it was weird. It was weird for me, and I was like, okay, this is the new world we live in now, and I must have only imagined for people who were a bit, older, it would have been more shocking, I guess. And but now looking at it afterwards, people are now comfortable with the idea of doing a call with your doctor, and just getting like, getting to be told if it's something serious or not over the phone calls. And you say it like even the NHS right now, they have online, sort of like online wards where there's just doctors sitting on, on like it's like a call center essentially for doctors, and they're just picking up calls, they're talking to people. People are being told if it's serious or not, because the idea is to try to take the pressure off the number of beds that are being occupied in the hospital, and by keeping people with minor issues at home as possible. So do you think that's how we're going to get to a point where most people would only need to go to the hospital for really serious operations, or maybe operations could also be done from home in the distant future? Like, what are
Well,
your thoughts?
we are seeing even a huge attempt in that side. No, I mean, augmented reality, robotics actually quite involved in surgeries as well. But I think as we go along, I think we'll start actually living more and more in a place where the health people are much more educated nowadays on their health records, needs, etc. And I think people are starting to realize now that then it's not that they have to adapt themselves to the health system, but the health system should be adapting to their way of living. And I think that actually is going to make a huge impact. I think as we go along, even wearables are going to start diminishing. And I think the environment is going to start giving us much more the ability to be monitored if we want to. Of course, there are a number of connotations when it comes to ethics, etc., that we will need to overcome. But I think as we go along, I mean, let's put it like this: halters, no, or something like they used to be so bulky on top of you that halter. What's the aim of a halter? Is to monitor you from home or during a long period of time, okay, during your normal lifestyle. Before you used to imagine halters with all those wires on top of you, etc., that people would just stay home on the sofa, not even going to work. So even the whole concept of monitoring through halter a patient and during his normal life was not being completed. Nowadays, halters, even in the case of the Humanity One, etc., and there are other devices, are just patches, etc., that are attached on your skin that you can go to work normally, etc., and have more the data that you collect truly represent your normal life or day in the life of, which basically that's all about. I think diagnosis, a number of different things can be done much better utilizing these type of technologies instead of actually having the technology or the way you monitor a patient that does not represent how that person lives his life. So I think technology itself, if done properly and if managed under due medical care by doctors, etc., I think it can. That's where we're going. I think.
Nice, nice, and that's really good. And yeah, just looking at the time and everything, I just wanted to also then just to ask you, like I know you already mentioned your thoughts on the future in terms of where we're going, and things that have really pushed the technology to develop that fast. But do you think, like, what else do you think is the biggest hurdle for telemedicine right now? Like, what challenges everyone sort of like facing? Is it an ethical challenge? Is it like security for information, cybersecurity? How do you keep that information and everything like that? What would you say?
I think we have a number of different challenges. I think we have a challenge first of all to make sure that the systems we're building, first of all, really are there to solve a problem. At times I see systems on the market as well that you say, listen, but do they actually solve a problem or not? So first of all, I think that's a fundamental thing, that the systems we build
Yes.
are actually helpful to either the medical staff to the hospital infrastructure, and to the patient. And I think if a solution does not answer those three particular questions, and they have to be helpful and useful for all the three for it to work, I think then the system shouldn't be a starter in the first place. So I think that's one. Second one is there is always going to be in these systems a little bit of a compromise, no? How much of the patient's data and security am I giving away for the benefit of the patient or for the benefit of who's using the system? And I think that's also a very important question to ask. And that's why I believe that a solid management system, solid actually regulatory framework as well. MDR is doing very well on that as well, now with the new adoption as well of the rules as well. So basically, that is a very important question. Now, with the introduction of artificial intelligence being used, nowadays we sprinkle a little bit of artificial intelligence on everything we do now. I mean, it became something a little bit,
Yes.
even things that are not classified as artificial intelligence in the past used to be classified as machine learning or algorithms. Nowadays we say it's artificial intelligence because it's quite interesting.
It sounds better. It sounds better.
Exactly. However, I think with a number of the data ending up in data training sets of artificial intelligence as well, there as well, I think we will have to deal with a number of ethical compliance as well. I mean, European Union now is moving on the AI Act as well. I think that we need to be redefined even further when it comes to health applications as well. So I think we're going to be looking at a number of implications. There's the first one, as I said before, the purpose, which I think in these systems is going to become the core. Are the system that you're developing, is it solving a problem, the crucial part? And is it adaptive? Because otherwise, if you don't have the medical staff utilizing your system and they're happy doing it, the patient happy to use your system, okay, and the hospital is willing to finance that system in the first place, okay, I think you will never have a system that works if you don't have all three on board. So I think that's the crucial first step of it. The second step is going to be how is the data being. Second one, I think it's even simpler than that. The second one is in reality the system just utilizing the data as an input or output, or is it also utilizing artificial intelligence to train data? So my data become nearly in the public domain to be trained to train actually larger models. Second one. And the third one is going to be what is the balance of what I'm giving to a service provider and manufacturer to what the patient is getting back in return. And I think for these arguments, we need to involve a lot of ethicists, etc., to help us balance these out.
Yes. Nice. And I'm quite interested actually because I think that's the thing with all technology, right? It's like when you're designing technology, it's always one thing that you have to think about as to how are you safeguarding the patient and how you're designing this to be something that people are also happy to wear. But just like out of curiosity, because looking at the ring, you showed that it looks quite fashionable. So do you guys have product designers on the team, or is it purely just engineers who have decided to come up with a good-looking design of the ring?
Well, there's a lot of work being done actually with us, with outsourced partners we have actually with us as well that collaborate with our teams as well. So the thing is, if you don't get the user to want to use it, I don't think the user will be willing to actually utilize something. So I think if we destigmatize as much as possible the fact that a medical device has to be clunky and ugly, and to the fact that a person wants to physically use something, I think we will never have a system that's purely something that, remember, this is not something that you wear for a week and then that's it. Our aim is to actually make lifestyle changes in people, no? In order for them to actually be wanting to be part of the system. And I think if you don't actually try to adapt to the actual design aspect, ease of use of things and user friendliness of things, you will never have a system that is truly adopted. And that would be a big, big mistake for everyone trying to do it.
Yes. And no, that's really good, and I'm happy to hear that. And just one more question that I have for you, just out of my own curiosity, is how do you keep starting new companies? Do you just have like these ideas that come to you whilst you're in the shower or something, and then you write it down on your notebook that you keep in the shower room? Or but how do you constantly keep starting companies and growing them to a point where you sort of like exit
No,
out?
but
So
I think, as they say, ideas are cheap. No, it's the execution. I think that is the most difficult part. However, it's not ideas. It's not just me. I'm just one of many. I just happen to actually work with a lot of people actually that actually give ideas, contribute, who work on ideas. I think it's the execution that actually, especially in this field now, this year we saw some brilliant companies go down because not because of their own need, but I think in our world, in the medtech world, and the medical devices and technology aspect, we depend a lot on the infrastructure, on larger infrastructures. Now, this year we saw, unfortunately, a brilliant company going down like Babylon. We saw a number of companies which are, I mean, other companies used to look at them as their light, no? As I mean, when you used to actually look at these kind that went down, and you start seeing the times it's not because they didn't have brilliant ideas, because they had brilliant ideas and brilliant products, in my opinion.
yeah,
But I think at the moment we need to start thinking much more on if your models actually are going to be adopted at who is going to pay for your product, for example. Okay, so I think it's not just about having a great idea, about having a great product, but to think very basic questions, basically, doesn't actually my business model make sense, and how can I improve that business model? So yes, I continue building companies purely because there are technologies and things that I would imagine and I would like to see out there. But then actually there are a series of other problems that actually are much harder than having the idea.
yes, and the process of growing a company from ground to the point where you exit, like what's that process like? Is that what keeps you going? Because from when you spoke the last time, you said you enjoyed the process of starting with something as well from the bottom up, and then you
I
do it
think
again, and then you do it again. So I don't know.
I
I
think
don't know.
everyone is good
Yeah.
at a part of a life cycle of a company.
Yes.
I think everyone is good at that. I
Yes.
think I think what I think I bring to the table is purely at the starting part, at the part when the company is actually starting off and starting to stabilize itself. I think everyone then has to admit that he's not good at some parts of running a venture. And I think the earlier you recognize the parts you're not good at and let them do it to other people as well, I
Yes.
think it's the best. I
Nice.
think at the start, every founder wants to be there all the way in a company, no? Wants
Correct.
to be there from the start to when it. But then actually, I think over years, you realize that you can contribute in this part of the company, and then others can contribute in other parts of the company.
Yes.
And I
But
think
yeah,
I think that's actually something that takes a lot of years, I think, to build.
yes.
And it's hard for the person that's doing that assessment, in this case myself. I say, listen, I think I can bring to the table in this part my best. In other parts, I let them actually others that are much, much better than me do.
Nice, nice. No, that's good. And yeah, definitely, I took note of that because one thing I always do on this podcast is also try to learn certain things in these discussions, and I'm sure the people who are listening today learned a lot as well from what stuff you've been working on. And I already said this is the last question, but is there anything else that you're working on that's that you'd like us to know about at this particular moment in time, or is just
No, at the moment, I'm focusing 100% on Plex, which takes a lot of energy, and a lot of
yes.
other people are actually helping out with their knowledge as well on that side. And of
Nice.
course, I have Triconsult, which is my consultancy company when it comes to helping other startups, other companies, and achieving their regulatory parts.
Yes.
Which I think
Nice.
those are actually things that I'm very much focused on as
Yes.
well. I try to help out in a number of other boards of other companies, trying to actually help them not repeating some mistakes I also made myself.
And that's good. That's good because I think sometimes you learn faster from other people's experiences than anything. So I'm gonna be adding like all those websites below and your contact details. I'll put your LinkedIn details below as well, so people,
Sure.
if people want to reach out to you and to ask you more questions and stuff, they can do that directly. But yeah, so
Sure.
thank you very much,
I think
Adrian. Yeah.
something, a message actually
Yes.
that would be interesting is that at times, as founders, as investors, as actual parts, we are much more propense to actually trumpet our successes. However, we also need to be in a position where we know where we didn't do our best and try to share it with others. Because like that, actually, that's why I like actually doing advisory, help actually other boards as well. Because by sharing some mistakes you made, also because you do mistakes, you do a lot of mistakes while doing this job. If you don't do it, means that you didn't do anything. So if you do a lot of mistakes, it means actually you've done quite a bit. And I think if you share those with another company, you try to avoid those founders, those board members as well, to repeat the same mistakes. So even if they do mistakes, will be fresh ones. And
Yes.
then actually like that, hopefully, other companies, new founders, new people actually starting new startups will be able to continue to scale up in a faster way. I think that's actually how we should try to approach building companies, especially in our field.
Yes, because I think some of the process of starting a company, or at least the product, can take several years, and that's without
Yes.
mistakes, and it costs a lot of money, particularly in medical industry or medical device industry, to get a product from conception idea all the way to market, and sometimes that can be overwhelming for a lot of people. A lot of people are scared to start companies, but with the right sort of like guidance, things do become easier. So, like, having said that, like for the ideas that I'm planning to execute or maybe start a company in the next few years, I'll come to you, Adrian, and I'll ask for your advice on that,
Well,
and maybe, and I'll also learn some stuff. And I also recommend anyone who's listening to this to consider that if you're planning to start a company, you need to get some people who can sort of show you the ropes a little bit, even if you think and you got everything, because there's always something you learn along the way. And yeah, and I've experienced that with this podcast. For example, I've learned some things here that I never knew before I even started, but it's just part of the continuous growth. You learn as you grow. And yeah, so yeah, I think that
if you
was
don't if
really,
you
yeah.
don't try, you will never know. That's the thing.
Exactly. And most people have the fear of looking like a fool, But I think sometimes you have to look like a fool at the beginning, right, so that you can actually
But we
reach to
all
the
do
point.
so much. I mean, we all look as a fool. I mean, I think it's part of the process.
Yeah,
I
but other people
mean, the
fear
thing
that.
is, if you truly believe in what you do, if you truly are all in, as they say, in poker and stuff like that, they say you go all in, and that's
Yes.
actually, I think, what people need to do.
Yes, and me, like every day when I want to start something and I feel like there's something that I don't know, I always remember this saying that says, like, even the giant oak trees started as a small seed. Some maybe whether it was 100 years ago or something like that, but everyone has to start somewhere, and overcoming that fear helps you start things, and I'm sure you overcame that fear because you continuously start companies, and some of these companies, yes, they might have a bit of sort of like technology based, but they're still solving different things essentially, and that's really admirable, and I'm really happy to have had you on the podcast today
Thanks
to
for having me.
discuss. Yeah, to discuss all these things. And yeah, thank you very much. And I'll be putting all the links of everything you've mentioned below, so people can just check it out, and yeah, and they can follow you on LinkedIn just to stay on top of what you'll be doing. Like, that's the reason why I also followed you, so that I just know what you're working on, because I know you're always going to be working on something. And I don't think you ever retire, to be honest. Even even in retirement, you'll be working on something. So and yeah, thank you very much. And yeah,
Thanks a lot. Have a good
yeah.
afternoon.